I want to thank my friend from Washington State for her courtesy, and I want to be clear that I'm very much looking forward to working with the bipartisan leadership here, Senator Murkowski and Senator Cantwell. This debate has been the longest running battle since the Trojan War. And the reality is you can almost set your clock by it. The infernos come to Oregon and Idaho, and Senators Crapo and Risch and I traipse over to the National Interagency Fire Center to talk about our bipartisan push to change the system of fighting wildfires. And I think we all understand, certainly the three of us who've been at this for years and our colleagues, that this is a broken, common sense defying system of fighting fire, where you borrow from prevention to put the fires out, and then the problem just gets worse. And Senator Crapo and I have had this bill that now has more than 250 organizations for scientists and timber companies and environmentalists. And I think the question is, how do we make the story different this year? How do we finally end the gridlock? And the three of us, I know, feel very strongly about getting there. And I think what I'd like to start with, Chief, is you've been involved with us every step of the way, supported the legislation. I think what I'd like to do is, since we've been at this over 4 years, what has been the cost of inaction?
Well, Senator, several ways to look at that. You know, one of the ways is, I think back when we first started this discussion, if we could have found a solution, it would have stopped the erosion of our active forest management programs, all the programs that provide, the service. So I think about the additional acres we could have treated over the last 4 years if we wouldn't have had this impact on the appropriator's ability to provide the funding. So if you look at over 4 years and you look at just the growth of the 10-year average, we could have easily been treating millions of more acres over the last 4 years. And then think about into the future, about the next 10 years. So just with a $156 million increase in the 10-year average, think about that over the next 10 years, $1.5 billion, and just think about what we could accomplish. The tens of millions of acres that we could treat to make a difference. We have the science, we have the experience, and we have study after study that shows that our projects are effective to reduce the cost of wildfires, it reduces the severity of wildfires, and there are independent studies that show that this work makes a difference and that we can reduce the size of wildfires by anywhere from 30 to 70%, and on average 41% by getting out there and doing the work. You've seen examples in your state. Senator Daines has seen examples. Senator Cantwell, Senator Murkowski, all of you have seen examples of this work that's being done. Our challenge is to be able to get to a place where we can right-size our budget so that we become more of that active management agency. And yes, we'll continue to do the wildfire suppression job, and we'll continue to excel at that. But that's just one way to be able to capture that. And I can go on about the number of homes that have been lost.
Why don't we hold the record open? But I think that's particularly important for members to know that this is not some abstract thing, that the costs of inaction are extraordinary, whether it's the millions of acres that could have been treated, homes lost, that kind of thing. So if you could get us out for the record. One other question, if I might. You were extraordinarily helpful to us on the stewardship contract, as you know, in John Day, huge victory for a community that, that would have really been lights out on mills in Eastern Oregon without your intervention there, tripling the harvest on the Malheur. And as you know, the stewardship program works very closely, although it's separate, with the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration program. And despite the success we've had with that collaborative forest restoration program, it's being zeroed out in the budget, in my view, when it's exactly what we ought to be expanding. I don't want to get you into politics and the like. You and I have talked about that over the years. So what's your response to the proposition of whether the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Program is helpful, cost-effective, and a positive force for rural Oregon and rural America.
So the CFLR projects have proven to be very effective. This concept of dedicating funds over time to large landscapes at a minimum of 50,000 acres, and to do it in a collaborative way, has not only increased the amount of work that's getting done, it's also resulted in a lot of financial contributions from outside the agency. So the model has been proven to be tremendously successful. And with our CFLR program over the last few years, we've been producing about 400 million board feet a year off of those projects. Now, the budget zeroes that out, but it doesn't stop us from using this model, across the board to be able to make this long-term dedication of funds to large landscapes and doing it in a collaborative way. I think it is a proven model. It took a few years for us to get started, but if you look at the results of this, I think it shows this is the right way for us to work. And there's nothing in our budget request that prevents us to be able to do that. Those 23 projects that are currently ongoing, they now will just have to compete with all the other work. We will not have dedicated funding for those projects.
Thank you.